Have you ever wondered what the end of the world feels like? Let me tell you. It's not fire and fury, or the dramatic crash of civilizations. No, the end of the world feels like silence. A silence so deep, it swallows your name, your memories, your humanity, and leaves you with nothing but the echo of what you used to be. The wind carried the scent of ash, sharp and bitter. The world was painted in shades of gray. Charcoal buildings, skeletal trees, roads cracked like shattered bones. It all felt hollow, as if the earth itself had stopped breathing. Each step I took echoed in the silence, but I didn't bother looking back. I stopped looking back a long time ago. I don't think about my name much these days. Names stopped mattering when the world ended. But once, I had one. Once, I was someone. I had a wife who hummed lullabies while stirring a pot on the stove, and a daughter who spun in golden shafts of sunlight spilling across the living room floor. Their laughter used to fill the air. Now, there's only silence. A silence so deep, it's deafening. The day the world ended. It started with a message. I was driving home from work, taking the same route I'd taken 1,000 times before. Rush hour, a sea of cars, the low hum of engines idling in the late afternoon heat. The sun dipped toward the horizon, casting a warm, golden glow over the city. It was the kind of ordinary day you don't know you'll miss until it's gone. Then, my phone buzzed. At first, I ignored it. Traffic was slow, but not slow enough to risk glancing down. The second buzz made my gut twist. I reached for it, stealing a quick glance. Emergency alert. Intercontinental nuclear missiles detected. Seek immediate shelter. Estimated impact, 12 minutes. The world didn't end in an explosion. It ended in silence. For a long, stretched moment, nobody moved. The hum of engines continued. Windshield wipers flicked away dust. A streetlight turned green. Life kept going, oblivious. Then, reality sank in. A driver stepped out of his car, staring at his phone, brow furrowed in confusion. A woman gasped, slamming her hands over her mouth. Someone shouted, and then another. The street unraveled in real time. Brakes screeched, horns blared, doors slammed. Chaos bloomed in slow motion. Some people ran. Some simply stood there, paralyzed, as if waiting for someone to wake them up. My pulse roared in my ears. I hit dial. Sarah. 1 ring. 2. 3. Then, Michael? Her voice was shaky, brittle, like glass on the verge of breaking. Sarah, listen to me. I'm coming home. What's happening? Michael, what's happening? I could hear Emma crying in the background, her small, scared voice muffled. I clenched the steering wheel, forcing my voice to stay calm. I don't know, I lied. But listen, you need to pack a bag, food, water, clothes, just the essentials. I'll be there in 10 minutes. Where will we go? She whispered. I don't know yet, but we'll figure it out. Together. A crash outside, a car colliding with a street pole. Someone screamed. The world was dissolving, and I was still miles away. I'm scared, she said, barely audible over the rising chaos. I know. My throat tightened. I know, but... Static. The line went dead. Sarah, I shouted, my voice cracking. Sarah. I hit redial. Nothing. And just like that, the world fell silent. I dropped the phone, my eyes darting to the horizon. In the distance, a faint flash of light painted the skyline, followed by another, brighter one. The road ahead blurred as a shockwave rippled through the air, shaking the ground beneath me. I don't remember much after that. Just the sound of my tires screeching as I swerved through traffic, the distant rumble of explosions, and the burning realization that I might be too late. The memory slipped away as quickly as it came, leaving me with the hollow ache it always did. I kept walking. That's all there was to do. Ahead, a sound rose in the distance, high-pitched, frantic, screams. Help me, please! A woman's voice, raw with terror. I didn't stop. The screams grew louder, slicing through the stillness. They clawed at the edges of my mind, demanding attention. "Somebody, please!" And then, just as suddenly, they stopped. I stepped over a shattered pane of glass and kept moving. Kindness gets you killed. That's the first rule. I learned it the hard way, watching people I thought I could trust turn on each other for scraps of food or a few drops of water. In this world, there's no room for heroes, no space for saviors. It's survival, plain and simple. The second rule: never stop moving. You stop, you die. Maybe not right away, but the world has a way of catching up to you when you stand still. And the third rule? Don't look back. The road was littered with bodies. Some lay in crumpled heaps, their limbs twisted at unnatural angles, as though they'd been running when the world caught up to them. Others were sprawled on their backs, faces turned skyward in silent resignation. Clothes hung loosely on their frames, bleached and tattered, flapping in the occasional breeze. Skin had turned leathery on some. Others were little more than skeletons, their ribs jutting out like the remains of some ancient shipwreck. Birds circled overhead, dipping low when they thought it was safe. I passed a crow perched on a corpse, tearing at what little flesh was left. It barely looked up when I walked by. I didn't stop. This was the world now. Death wasn't shocking anymore. It was a constant. If you stopped to think about it, let it sink in, you'd never move again, and stopping was death. I saw her from a distance, tied to a pole, her arms stretched high above her head, the rope digging into her wrists. She was thin, her clothes tattered, and her hair matted, but her face was defiant, a twisted smirk playing on her lips like she was in on some cruel joke. "Help me!" she screamed, her voice raw and hoarse. "Please, somebody!" I stopped, crouching low behind a burned-out car. The road was quiet, too quiet, the kind of quiet that made your skin prickle. I scanned the area, my eyes catching subtle movements in the shadows. Figures crouched low, waiting. A trap. I sighed, pulling my rifle from my back. These sons of bitches always thought they were clever. The first shot rang out before they even had a chance to move. The man hiding in the bushes to my left crumpled, blood pooling beneath him. The others sprang into action, their cover blown. One charged me, a crowbar raised high, but he didn't make it far. 2 shots to the chest, and he was down. The last one tried to run, but I caught him with a bullet to the back before he made it 5 steps. The silence returned, thick and oppressive. The smell of blood mingled with the dry, acrid scent of the road. I stood there for a moment, scanning the horizon for any other threats. Nothing. I turned back to the woman. She was staring at me, her eyes wide with fear and something else I couldn't quite place. Relief? Gratitude? It didn't matter. "Please," she said, her voice trembling. I didn't have a choice. They made me do it. I swear I didn't want to. I approached slowly, my rifle still raised. Her body sagged against the pole, her knees buckling as tears streamed down her face. "Please," she whispered again. "Don't kill me." I hesitated. The part of me that remembered what it was like to care told me to let her go. She was tied up, helpless, no threat. I lowered the rifle, stepping past her without a word. That's when I saw the shadow. It was faint, a flicker of movement in the corner of my eye, but it was enough. I spun around, raising the rifle as she lunged at me, a jagged knife clutched in her hand. I didn't think. I just fired. The shots echoed across the empty road. She collapsed in a heap, the knife falling from her hand and clattering to the ground. Her smirk was still frozen on her lips, even in death. I stood there, staring down at her body. The scavengers around me, the blood seeping into the pavement. None of it meant anything. Kindness gets you killed. That's the first rule. I looted the bodies quickly, some ammo, a few cans of food, nothing worth the trouble, and moved on. By the time the first drops of rain started falling, The horizon was already fading into a smear of gray. The ruins of an old warehouse offered some semblance of shelter. The roof was full of holes, letting the rain drip through in thin, steady streams, but it was better than nothing. I settled into a corner, the cold stone pressing against my back, the rifle across my knees. The rain came harder, a relentless rhythm against the broken walls. I watched the water pool on the floor, the world outside dissolving into a blur of motion and sound. My eyelids felt heavy, but sleep didn't come. It never did. That's when I saw it. A rat, small and scrappy, darted through the puddles toward me. It stopped just a few feet away, its beady eyes gleaming in the faint light. "Well, hello there," I muttered. The rat didn't move, its tiny chest rising and falling as it watched me. "Are you here to judge me too?" I asked, my voice dripping with sarcasm. The rat twitched its nose, silent as the rain. "Figures. Can't even get a verdict from you." I leaned my head back against the wall, the tension in my body easing ever so slightly. The rat scurried closer, sniffing at the edge of my boot. I didn't move. "You know," I said, my voice low, "I wasn't always like this. I used to believe in things, hope, love, a future." I let out a bitter laugh. "But now I can't even look at a screaming woman without thinking, better her than me." The rat darted away, disappearing into the shadows. "Yeah," I murmured, closing my eyes. "Better her than me." The rain fell harder, and sleep pulled me under like a tide. The following day, as I continued on the path, is when I saw her. Farther down the road, a figure moved, a blur of motion against the stillness of the dead. At first, I thought it was another scavenger, someone picking through the remains for anything worth taking. But then I saw how they moved. Slow, uneven, dragging themselves forward with all the energy of a dying animal. Not a scavenger, not someone hunting, someone trying to survive. I ducked low, crouching behind the rusted husk of an old truck. From this distance, I could make out the details. Clothes hanging loosely over a thin frame, a rounded belly visible even through the tattered fabric. Pregnant, struggling, alone, a dead woman walking. My gut twisted, but I ignored it. She wasn't my problem. She'd never make it on her own, not in her condition. Starvation, infection, scavengers, take your pick. Death had already chosen her. All I'd be doing was speeding it along. I shifted my pack and got ready to move on, but something made me stay. Maybe it was the way she stumbled, her legs buckling beneath her like the weight of the world was too much. Maybe it was the way she clung to her belly like it was the only thing keeping her grounded. Or maybe I just hated the way it felt to watch someone struggle and do nothing. She collapsed by the side of the road, falling to her knees with a muffled cry. I sighed, rubbing the back of my neck, then stepped out from behind the truck. My boots crunched against the gravel as I approached, slow and deliberate. Her head shot up at the sound, her eyes wide with panic. "Hey," I called, my voice rough. "I'm not here to hurt you." She froze, her chest rising and falling in shallow, rapid breaths. Up close, she looked worse than I'd thought. Skin pale, lips cracked, and dark shadows under her eyes. She tried to speak, but her voice came out in a dry rasp. "Here." I pulled a can of food from my pack and set it on the ground in front of her. "Eat. Slowly. If you don't, you'll regret it." Her eyes darted between me and the can. "Why?" she croaked. "Doesn't matter," I said flatly. I pulled a threadbare blanket from my pack and draped it over her shoulders before setting down the revolver. 3 bullets. "Take this," I said, holding her gaze. "If you're lucky, you won't need it. If you do, save the last one for yourself." Her hand trembled as she reached for the gun. I don't know how. Point. Pull. Try not to miss." Her lips quivered, but she nodded, clutching the gun to her chest like a lifeline. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice cracking. I didn't respond. I just turned and walked away. I didn't go far before I heard the footsteps. They were faint at first, barely audible over the wind, but they were there. I stopped, my jaw tightening, as I turned to see her stumbling after me, the blanket wrapped around her like a makeshift cloak. She stopped when I did, her chest heaving as she struggled to catch her breath. "I told you to stay put," I said sharply. "I can't," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I won't make it alone." "That's not my problem." I turned back toward the road. "Go back." "I can't," she said again, louder this time. Her voice cracked with desperation. "I've made it this far, and I'm not stopping now." "Then good luck," I muttered, taking another step forward. "Wait," she called after me. "If you don't care, why did you help me?" The question stopped me in my tracks. I didn't turn around. "I didn't help you," I said, my voice hard. "You gave me food, a blanket, a gun. Why would you do that if you didn't care?" I clenched my fists, my nails digging into my palms. I didn't have an answer. Or maybe I did, and I just didn't want to say it. "Doesn't matter," I muttered. "You're on your own." "No," she said simply. "I'm not leaving." There was something in her voice, not defiance, not pleading, just certainty. I turned to face her, my teeth gritted. "You slow me down. You're dead weight. You'll get us both killed." She didn't flinch. "Then why are you still standing here?" I opened my mouth to respond, but the words didn't come. I shook my head, muttering under my breath, "Fine, but don't slow me down." She nodded, her face pale but resolute. "I won't." That night, we made camp in the remains of an old bus. The windows were shattered, and the seats were torn to shreds, but it kept the wind out well enough. Elizabeth curled up in the back, wrapped in the blanket I'd given her. Her breathing was slow and steady, her hands resting protectively over her belly. I sat near the front, the rifle across my knees, staring out at the darkened road. The moonlight spilled through the broken windows, casting jagged shadows across the walls. My thoughts drifted, unbidden, to the woman on the pole. The way she'd pleaded, the way she'd smiled, even as she lunged with a knife in her hand. And then I looked at Elizabeth as she was sleeping. Dead weight. The thought came unbidden, sharp and cruel. She's slowing you down, drawing attention, a liability. You've seen how this ends. You know what happens when you let people get close. I stood, grabbing my pack and rifle. The bus creaked beneath my weight as I stepped out into the cold night air. My boots crunched against the gravel as I walked, each step heavier than the last. The wind bit at my face, carrying with it the faint scent of rain. I didn't stop until I'd gone half a mile. The road stretched out in front of me, empty and endless, the shadows closing in like a shroud. You did the right thing, I told myself. She'll die either way. Better now than later. But the silence pressed in, heavy and suffocating. I stood there for what felt like an eternity, staring down at the cracked pavement beneath my boots. My fists clenched and unclenched at my sides. Fuck, I muttered, the word sharp in the still air. I turned back. The bus loomed ahead, dark and silent. I stepped inside, my boots scraping against the metal floor. Elizabeth stirred as I approached, her eyes fluttering open. She looked at me groggily, her expression unreadable. You're still here, she murmured, her voice thick with sleep. And you are still a liability. Get some rest, I said, slinging my pack down beside me. We leave at dawn. She didn't say anything else, just nodded and closed her eyes. I leaned back against the seat, the rifle resting across my lap, and listened to the wind howl outside. For the first time in a long time, the silence didn't feel so heavy. The morning was bitterly cold, the kind of cold that settled in your bones and stayed there. We'd been walking for hours, the landscape an endless stretch of cracked asphalt and skeletal trees. Elizabeth kept up, but barely. Her breaths came in shallow gasps, her steps faltering with every mile. You're slowing us down, I said, my voice sharp. She broke off, coughing into her sleeve. I'm fine. I stopped, turning to face her. You're not fine. You're a liability. If we get caught out here because you can't keep up, it's not just your life on the line. It's mine. Her gaze hardened, a flicker of defiance breaking through her exhaustion. I didn't ask you to stay. No, I said coldly. You begged me to. She didn't respond, her jaw tightening as she pushed past me. I let her take the lead, my eyes scanning the horizon for movement. We stopped at an abandoned gas station, the roof half caved in and the windows long shattered. Elizabeth slumped against the counter, her face pale and drawn. I rifled through the shelves, kicking aside debris as I searched for anything worth taking. Do you ever stop? She asked, her voice hoarse. Stopping gets you killed, I said, grabbing a dented can from the floor. It was unlabeled, but I pocketed it anyway. Is that all it is to you? She asked, her tone sharper now. Just surviving? I turned to face her, my expression hard. It's not about what it is to me. It's about what it is. Surviving is the only thing that matters. She shook her head, her hand resting on her belly. That's not enough. I let out a bitter laugh. You think there's more? Look around. This world doesn't care about hope or dreams or futures. It chews you up, spits you out, and moves on. The sooner you realize that, the better. Her eyes glistened, but she held my gaze. If it's so pointless, why are you still here? The question hit harder than it should have. I turned back to the shelves, my jaw tightening. Because I'm too stubborn to die. We continued in silence for a while after the gas station. Elizabeth's steps were slow, unsteady, her face pale against the dimming light. I could tell she was still shaken, the reality of what she'd just seen hanging heavy in the air. Do you still have the gun? I asked suddenly, my voice breaking the quiet. She looked up, her brow furrowed. What? The gun I gave you, I said, glancing over my shoulder. Do you still have it? Her hand instinctively went to her pack, resting against the lump where I knew she'd tucked it away. Yes, she said cautiously. Why? I stopped, turning to face her fully. Because you're going to need it. Do you know what happens if some of the sadistic ones find you? Her expression tightened, her jaw setting as she stared at me. I'm not stupid. No, I said, but you're still naive. Her hand clenched around the strap of her pack. Did you really expect me to use it on myself? Is that why you gave it to me? Yes, I said without hesitation. But I'm glad you didn't. She blinked, taken aback. I turned and started walking again, my voice low but firm. Good to know you still have it. Her footsteps were lighter now, more deliberate, as if she was testing the weight of the gun in her mind. She didn't respond, but I could feel her eyes on me, her silence heavy with questions she wasn't ready to ask. The first sign of trouble was the sound, soft but deliberate, the crunch of boots against gravel. My hand went to the rifle slung over my shoulder as I gestured for Elizabeth to stay behind me. She froze, her breath hitching as her eyes darted around the room. They came through the back, 3 of them, their faces shadowed by the hoods of their jackets. One had a machete, the blade nicked and rusted. The others carried pipes, their edges sharpened to crude points. Well, well, one of them said, his grin showing teeth too white for this world. I could almost smell his rancid breath from across the building. What do we have here? Not worth your time, I said, my voice low. Move along. The one with the machete laughed, the sound grating. Oh, I think you've got something worth taking. He caught sight of Elizabeth standing behind me and shouted to the other, Looks like we got ourselves a woman here, boys. I raised the rifle. Last chance. The room exploded into chaos. The machete came first, swinging low. I sidestepped, the blade whistling past me as I brought the butt of the rifle down on his wrist. He screamed, the machete clattering to the floor. The second man lunged, his pipe aimed at my chest. I fired once, the shot echoing through the small space. He fell, clutching his side as blood pooled beneath him. The last one hesitated, his eyes darting between me and his fallen comrades. "Not worth it," he muttered, backing toward the door. I didn't let him go far. One more shot, and the room went silent. Elizabeth stayed pressed against the counter, her eyes wide and unblinking. Blood splattered the floor, the smell sharp and metallic. I stepped over the bodies, reloading the rifle with practiced ease. She didn't speak until I crouched beside the man with the machete, rummaging through his jacket for anything useful. "Fucking animals," she said, her voice trembling. I glanced at her. "Are you okay?" Her hands clenched the edge of the counter, her knuckles white. "Yeah," but I knew what she was thinking. As I asked her, "Do you know why I killed the last one as he was running?" "They would have come back," I said flatly, "with more people, and they wouldn't have hesitated next time." She looked down, her lips pressed into a thin line. "You didn't even hesitate." "No," I said, standing. "I didn't." The silence between us was heavy, the weight of what she'd just seen settling over her. I could see it in her eyes, the doubt, the fear. She thought I was a monster. Maybe I was. "You want to survive?" I said, my voice low. "This is what it takes. You want to hope and dream and play nice? That's how you die." We left the gas station as the sun dipped below the horizon, the sky bleeding into shades of orange and red. Elizabeth stayed quiet, her pace slower than usual. I kept a few paces ahead, my rifle at the ready, but my thoughts drifted back to her words. When we made camp that night, she sat by the fire, the flames casting shadows across her face. She looked at me, her expression softer now, though the fear hadn't completely left her eyes. "You could have left me back there," she said. I shrugged. "You're still dead weight." She smirked faintly, the expression fleeting. "Maybe, but you're still here." I didn't respond. I just leaned back against the wall, the firelight flickering in my peripheral vision. She didn't press, and I didn't offer anything more. But as the wind howled outside, the silence between us felt less heavy. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was walking alone. After the encounter with the raiders, we pushed further into the ruins, keeping low and quiet. The adrenaline had worn off, but the weight of it lingered, heavy in our bones. The only good thing that came from it was the ammo. A few extra bullets could mean the difference between life and death. We found an old school at the edge of town, a crumbling skeleton of a past that no longer existed. Inside, desks lay overturned, their metal legs rusted, and faded murals stretched across the walls. Ghosts of a world that once taught children, not killers. It was quiet, a rare stillness. I checked my gun, then the bullets we'd taken, enough to spare a few for something important. "Come with me," I said. She hesitated but followed. I led her to the back of the school, past what used to be a playground, where rusted swings swayed in the wind. Beyond the fence, an empty stretch of asphalt and weeds, perfect for what I had in mind. I set up a few bottles on a crumbling ledge, spacing them out. She frowned. "What are we doing?" I held out the gun. "You need to learn how to shoot." She stiffened. I don't think I can." "You think those raiders will care about that?" My voice was calm, but firm. "They would have killed us back there. If you want to survive, you need to be ready." She swallowed hard but took the gun, her hands shaking. "All right," I said. "First, your grip. Tight, but don't lock your elbows. Relax your shoulders, feet apart." She adjusted, her stance awkward, but she was trying. "Now, aim down the sight. Line it up." She squinted, trying to focus. "Breathe in," I said. "Hold it, then squeeze the trigger. Don't pull, just squeeze." She exhaled and fired. The shot missed wide. "Again," I said. She fired. The second shot hit the ledge below the bottle. A flicker of frustration crossed her face, but I shook my head. "Better. You'll get there." She tried again, and again. The last shot knocked the bottle over. She let out a breath, part relief, part shock. "You did it," I said. She looked at me, then at the gun in her hands, as if seeing it differently for the first time. I took the weapon back and reloaded, showing her the process step by step. "You always check how many bullets you have left," I said. "Every time. You don't want to hear a click when you need a bang." She nodded, listening. "If you see someone first," I continued, locking the magazine in place, "you don't wait. You don't ask questions. You shoot first. Questions are for people who have time." Her face hardened, but there was hesitation in her eyes. "I don't know if I can do that," she admitted. "You will," I said, "or you won't survive." The words hung in the air, cold but true. The world didn't care who you used to be. It only cared who you were willing to become. Elizabeth sat on an overturned desk, her hands resting on her belly. She didn't say much, which suited me just fine. Words didn't fix things, never had. I rifled through an old storage closet, pulling open drawers and kicking aside debris. Most of it was junk, broken pencils, faded worksheets, a child's shoe too small to be of any use. But in the corner, I found a bottle of water, dusty but sealed. I tossed it to her without a word. "Thanks," she said softly, unscrewing the cap and taking a careful sip. I nodded, leaning against the doorframe. "We leave in an hour." The silence stretched between us, the kind that felt heavier than words. She finally broke it. "Do you ever think about what it used to be like?" she asked, her voice quiet. I didn't look at her. "There is no point." "But you remember," she pressed, her tone more insistent now. "You had to have been someone before all this." I sighed, my fingers tracing the edge of the rifle slung over my shoulder. We were all someone before. Doesn't matter now. "It matters," she said, meeting my eyes. "It matters because it's the only part of us they didn't take." I stared at her for a moment, the faint lines of exhaustion etched into her face. "Who's they?" She hesitated, her gaze dropping to the floor. "Everyone who let this happen." I didn't respond, but something about her words lingered, gnawing at the edges of my thoughts. After a moment, she continued. "I was a teacher before raiders attacked us," she said, her voice soft but steady. "3rd grade. My kids used to call me Miss E. It wasn't much, but it mattered. To them, to me." I leaned back against the wall, closing my eyes. I had a wife, a daughter. They mattered. Her breath hitched, but she didn't say anything. The silence grew heavy again, but it didn't feel as suffocating this time. I don't know why I kept talking. Maybe it was the way she listened, like the world wasn't crumbling around us for just a moment. Or maybe I just needed to hear it out loud. "Her name was Clara," I said, the words coming slowly, like they were being pulled from somewhere deep and dark. "My wife, and Emma. She was 6, loved painting. Every morning she'd run to the window and tell me the sky was nature's canvas. She said it like she'd just invented the phrase." Elizabeth smiled faintly. "She sounds beautiful." "She was," I said, my throat tightening, "and I lost them." Her eyes softened, her hand instinctively going to her belly. "I'm sorry." "Don't be," I said sharply, turning away. "It's just the way things are." She didn't press, but after a while, she spoke again. "Do you think it's selfish?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "What?" "This," she said, gesturing to her belly. "Bringing a baby into a world like this." I didn't answer, right away. The question hung between us, heavy and sharp. Finally, I said, "It's not selfish. It's stupid." Her face tightened, but she didn't look away. "I have to believe it's worth it. That they'll have a chance, even if we don't." "A chance?" "Look around you, Elizabeth." "That's the problem," I said, my voice cold. "Believing doesn't change the world. It just makes it harder when it crushes you." She shook her head, her eyes glistening. "It's not about believing in the world. It's about believing in them. That night, we sat by a small fire in what used to be the school courtyard. The stars were faint, hidden behind a thin layer of clouds, but the firelight flickered against the broken walls, casting everything in shades of orange and shadow. Elizabeth pulled a can of food from her pack, handing it to me without a word. I raised an eyebrow. "You didn't eat today," she said simply. "I don't need it," I muttered, setting the can aside. She stared at me, her expression soft but firm. "Eat. Please." I hesitated, then opened the can. The taste was metallic and bland, but it was better than nothing. She watched me for a moment before leaning back against the wall, her eyes fluttering shut. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was sitting alone. The day started quiet, the kind of quiet that always made my skin crawl. We'd been holed up in an old diner for 2 days. A risk, but Elizabeth needed the rest. Her steps had grown slower, her breaths shallower. Every mile felt like it was pulling her closer to collapse. She sat by the window, staring out at the empty road. Her hand rested on her belly, her face pale but calm. "You don't have to stay," she said suddenly, her voice soft. I didn't look up from where I was cleaning the rifle. "We've been over this." "I mean it," she said, turning to face me. "If it gets bad, if it's between you and me—" "It won't be," I interrupted, my voice sharper than I intended. "So stop." Her lips pressed into a thin line, but she didn't argue. She just turned back to the window, her fingers tracing absent patterns on the dusty glass. The first sign came just after sunset, the faint crunch of gravel outside. I froze, my hand tightening around the rifle as my eyes darted to the window. Elizabeth tensed, her breath hitching as she followed my gaze. "They found us," I muttered, moving to the corner where my pack was stashed. "Get in the back. Stay quiet." She didn't argue. For once, she just obeyed, retreating to the storeroom with a speed I hadn't seen in days. I positioned myself by the door, the rifle at the ready, listening as the sounds grew closer. 3, maybe 4 of them. Voices, low and rough, drifted through the cracks in the walls. "Looks like someone's been nesting here," one of them said, his tone mocking. "Think they'll share?" "Think we'll take it," another replied, his laughter cutting through the night. They didn't bother with subtlety. The door slammed open, and the first man stepped inside, his knife glinting in the dim light. He didn't even have time to shout before the rifle kicked against my shoulder, the shot echoing through the empty space. The second man was smarter, ducking behind the counter as I fired again. The third came from the side, swinging a crowbar at my head. I blocked it with the rifle, the force of the blow rattling my arms. I swung the butt of the gun into his face, and he crumpled to the floor. The fourth man hesitated in the doorway, his eyes wide. "You don't have to do this," he said, raising his hands. "Neither did you," I replied, pulling the trigger. The silence that followed was deafening. Blood pooled on the floor, the acrid smell filling the air. My breaths came in ragged gasps as I scanned the room for any signs of movement. Nothing. A sound behind me made me turn. Elizabeth stood in the doorway of the storeroom, her face pale but resolute. Her eyes flicked to the bodies on the floor, then back to me. "You're hurt," she said, her voice trembling. I looked down, noticing the blood seeping through my shirt for the first time. The crowbar must have caught me, but I didn't feel it yet. Adrenaline had a funny way of numbing things. "It's fine," I said, my voice gruff. "We need to move." But even as I said it, my legs wobbled. I leaned against the counter, my vision swimming. Elizabeth rushed to my side, her hands pressing against the wound. "You're not fine," she said, panic creeping into her voice. "You're bleeding too much." "We don't have time for this," I muttered, my breath hitching. "They'll have more people. They always do." She shook her head, tears streaking her cheeks. "You can't fight like this." I gritted my teeth, forcing myself to stand straighter. "I'm not fighting. I'm buying you time." Her eyes widened. "No, no, you're not." "Yes, I am," I snapped, my voice hard. "You don't get to argue. Not this time. I shoved the rifle into her hands, ignoring the way they trembled as she gripped it. You go, I said, my voice steadier now. You find somewhere safe. You keep that baby alive. You hear me? Her sobs were quiet, but the way she nodded told me she understood. She adjusted the strap of her pack, the rifle clutched tightly against her chest. I turned toward the door, pulling the knife from my belt. The footsteps were already getting louder, the reinforcements arriving faster than I'd hoped. I glanced back at her one last time. Go, I said. As she was going, she looked back one last time and said, Thank you, Michael. I nodded. The fight was brutal, a blur of blood and steel. Every swing of the knife felt heavier, every movement slower. The pain in my side burned hotter with each second, but I didn't stop, couldn't stop. They kept coming, their shouts mingling with the sound of gunfire. I didn't count how many I killed. I didn't care. All that mattered was keeping them from following her. The last one came at me with a crowbar, the same as before. I blocked the swing, but the force sent me crashing to the floor. I looked up, the barrel of a pistol staring back at me. For the first time in years, I smiled. The shot rang out, and everything went quiet. Elizabeth didn't stop running until the sounds faded behind her, her breaths coming in ragged gasps. She collapsed against a tree, clutching the rifle like it was the only thing keeping her upright. The world felt too quiet now, the weight of what had just happened pressing down on her chest. She looked down at her belly, her hands trembling as they rested against it. I'll keep us safe, she whispered, her voice cracking. I promise. The hill overlooked a ruined town, its broken buildings slumped like forgotten tombstones under the gray sky. Elizabeth stood there, the rifle slung over her shoulder, and the blanket he'd given her wrapped tightly around her. Her belly, now unmistakably full, made each breath feel heavier, but she kept moving. Stopping wasn't an option, not anymore. The grave was shallow, the earth stubborn against her worn hands. 2 sticks tied together with frayed cloth marked the spot, leaning precariously in the frozen ground. She stared at it for a long time, her breath visible in the cold air. Thank you, she whispered, for saving me, for believing in me, for them. Her hand rested on her belly, and she turned away, her footsteps crunching softly in the brittle grass. She found an old barn a mile down the road. It wasn't much, but it would keep out the wind. Inside, she sat against the wall, clutching her belly, her eyes fixed on the horizon through a crack in the boards. I don't know if I'll make it, she murmured, her voice trembling. But I have to try. For you. For him. The baby kicked. A sharp, tiny reminder of the life she carried. A faint smile broke through her exhaustion, and she whispered, You're stubborn. Just like him. The fire she'd lit flickered faintly in the corner, its warmth small but real. Outside, the wind howled through the cracks, carrying the sounds of a broken world. She pulled the blanket tighter, her hand resting on her belly as her eyes closed. In the darkness, her voice echoed softly. Maybe it's not about surviving. Maybe it's about what you leave behind.